Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're traveling back in time, about 2,500 years actually, right to this precise moment where a major world religion, you could say, really began. We're in the deer park at Isipatana for the very first sermon.
It's the absolute genesis moment. This is where the Sangha, the spiritual community, is born. And the story we're diving into today isn't so much about the teacher, but about his very first students. These 5 men, known as the Pañcavaggiyā.
And what makes it so fascinating, I think, is the history these 5 men had with the man who would become the Buddha. I mean, they weren't just random bystanders who happened to be there. They were his most committed companions during his darkest, most brutal phase of seeking.
For years, they shared this incredibly painful, extreme self-torture. They all really believed, that truth was only attainable through self-mortification, starvation, holding your breath, enduring agony. They were deeply, deeply invested in that path.
Which is why the break was so dramatic. The sources really highlight this, this intense emotional moment. When Siddhartha realizes asceticism is just a dead end and he accepts a simple bowl of food, that moment, he chooses the middle way. Well, his friends feel completely betrayed.
Utterly betrayed. They look at him and they just see a failure, someone who gave up. So they abandon him, they walk away.
And that shared history, all that seeking together, all that pain, it makes their reunion in the deer park so charged, doesn't it? It's not just a teacher meeting students, it's a reconciliation. After years of disappointment and, I guess, profound philosophical disagreement.
That's the perfect word for it. It's charged with significance.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little. If we're talking about the founding members, the very first ones, we have to start by admitting they weren't blind followers. They were critics. They left him first. What was really going on there that allowed them to finally listen again? And maybe more importantly, what can we, sitting here today with our own anxieties, learn from these 5 really distinct personalities?
That's exactly the mission of this deep dive. The Pañcavaggiyā are, you could say, the 5 foundational bricks. Their names were Kondanna, Vapa, Padilla, Mahanoma, and Assaji. And their journey is proof that this path is possible for very different kinds of people, for different psychological profiles. Each one had to overcome their own unique hurdle.
So let's start with the senior figure then, Kondanna. His connection to the Buddha goes way, way back, decades, right, to the very beginning.
That's right. According to the tradition, Kondanna was a respected Brahmin master. He was the youngest one, actually, at the naming ceremony for Prince Siddhartha. All the other masters were sort of hedging their bets, saying the prince would either be a great king or a great spiritual leader. But Kondanna, he was the only one to raise just one finger.
One finger, meaning what? No question about it, this child becomes a Buddha. That's some serious conviction from the start.
Exactly. Decisive. And that initial insight, that seed planted all those years ago, it finally flowers in the deer park when the Buddha delivers that first discourse. The turning of the wheel of the Dhammakondanna is the very first one to get it. The sources say that while the others were listening, processing it logically, Kondanna had this complete internal shift, an immediate realization.
What was it specifically that broke through for him? What was the realization?
It was this profound, really radical understanding of impermanence, of conditionality. He grasped the principle that in Pali is yam kinichi samudayat hamam sabam tam nirathanbanti. Basically, the universal truth that whatever has the nature to arise also has the nature to cease.
Everything is temporary. Everything passes away.
Precisely. And the Buddha saw it in him immediately. He exclaimed, Anya sivata bokotanyo, which means Kondanna has truly understood. And in that moment, he becomes the first stream enterer, a Sotapanna.
Okay, for our listeners, what does becoming a stream enterer actually mean in, say, psychological terms? It's not just a title, is it?
Not at all. It's a definitive, irreversible break. It means the first 3 fetters that bind us are just gone. First, the belief in a permanent separate self, that's gone. Second, any doubt about the teacher or the path, gone. And third, the attachment to rituals just for their own sake. Kondanna saw the truth so clearly he could never go back.
That's real clarity. But then Kondanna does something fascinating later on, something that seems like a contradiction.
He does, and what's so interesting here is the balance he achieves. He has this powerful, decisive conviction at the key moment. But later, even though he's the highest elder, the Ratanya, the most experienced one, he chooses to retreat. He goes into complete forest solitude for 12 years.
Wait, hold on. If he's the most senior, the most experienced, wouldn't leaving for 12 years be seen as, shirking his duty?
Yeah.
In our culture today, stepping away from the top job is almost always seen as a failure. What was the context then that made this act of humility, not abandonment?
That's a brilliant question. For the early community, the goal was always internal freedom, not building an institution. Kutanya's retreat was seen as deeply selfless. He realized that his presence, as the very first disciple, might overshadow the next generation of incredibly gifted monks who were emerging, people like Sariputta and Moggallana. So he stepped back, gracefully, to give them space to lead. It shows his ultimate commitment was to the teaching itself, not to his personal status.
That is a huge lesson for modern leadership, knowing when your presence is actually an obstacle and having the wisdom to just step away.
And from there, the sources show us the path for the others. After Kutanya's insight, the Buddha keeps teaching patiently. The 4 remaining monks would take turns going for alms while the others studied, and the second one to awaken was Vappa.
Right. So Kutanya is the archetype for that flash of genius insight. Vappa must be the model for the rest of us who have to, grind it out.
Absolutely. Vappa's great strength was virya, or extraordinary diligence. Persistence. He wasn't the quickest student, not the most brilliant, but he was incredibly persistent. His main challenge was making that difficult transition from the brute force effort of self-torture to the subtle, diligent path of the middle way.
And that switch from brute force to subtle consistency, that is so hard. We often mistake effort for suffering, don't we? So how does Vappa help us today?
Vappa is the perfect antidote to our modern obsession with quick fixes and overnight success. He shows us that this kind of deep realization isn't just for the gifted or the fastest learners. It's earned. It's earned through steady, courageous, consistent daily practice. It's the showing up day after day that eventually breaks through. Vappa's lesson is, don't stop showing up.
Don't stop showing up.
I love it.
So we have decisive insight from Kunyanya and diligent consistency from Vappa. Who's number 3?
Next was Bhaddhiya. The texts describe him as coming from a high-status family, deeply embedded in the old Vedic traditions, the rituals, the established views.
So he's carrying a lot of psychological baggage. His whole identity is tied up in his social standing and his history.
Exactly. And for him, the journey required what the sources call a violent internal revolution. He had to abandon all of it. The deep-seated prejudices, the need for external status, all to accept these radical ideas of not self and an end to suffering taught by this young monk who had himself rejected royal status.
That's not just changing your mind. That's letting go of your entire identity, your family's expectations, your social standing. How did he do it?
The focus is on the mental shift. He had to release the pride that came with it. The psychological freedom he finds is called nakama, or relinquishment, and it's the prerequisite for any near insight. Bhaddhiya teaches us that you have to let go of the need to be someone, your job title, your past achievements, to truly hear a new truth.
That's so relatable for anyone feeling burned out by the pressure to achieve. We all struggle with letting go of who we think we're supposed to be.
And our fourth is Mahanama. Tradition paints him as having this very dignified, serene presence, a calm temperament. He found his understanding not through some sudden insight, but through quiet contemplation, a gentle, thorough understanding of suffering and the path.
So he's the archetype of quiet dignity and mindfulness.
Precisely. His calm demeanor, his mindful conduct. This is what established the early Sangha's reputation for peace. His lesson is the power of silent presence, that how you behave, how you carry yourself can influence others more powerfully than 1,000 words. It's an unspoken teaching.
A powerful idea that your own stillness can be a teaching.
And finally, we get to Assaji. He was the youngest, the last of the 5 to have that initial insight, and yet he becomes this crucial historical link, a turning point for the whole tradition.
What was his big moment?
It happens later, in the city of Rajagaha. A brilliant seeker named Upatissa, who would later become the great disciple Sariputta, sees Assaji walking for alms one morning. And he's just struck by Assaji's absolute peacefulness, his composure. Upatissa thinks to himself, if there are enlightened beings in the world, this man must be one of them.
So just the way he walked was enough to completely transform an observer's state of mind. No word spoken yet.
Exactly. So Upatissa approaches him, asks about his teacher's doctrine, and Assaji replies so humbly, he says he's still new, that he can only summarize the essence. And he recites just 4 lines, the famous verse on causality. The Tathagata has explained the causes of phenomena which arise from causes and their cessation.
And that was it. Those simple lines, spoken with sincerity, caused this brilliant seeker Upatissa to attain stream entry right there on the spot.
Instantly. The lesson from Assaji is radical humility. You don't need to be the expert or have total mastery to profoundly touch someone. True wisdom, spoken honestly and modestly, has immense power because it's just the core truth.
This is such a beautiful history. We have these 5 distinct psychological profiles: the intuitive leader, the persistent worker, the renunciate, the silent presence, and the humble guide.
And this brings us right back to your original question. What can these 5 monks really offer a modern person dealing with, overwork, anxiety, loneliness?
Exactly. What's the practical summary here? How do we use their stories?
Well, first, there's one final piece of the story. After all 5 had that initial insight, the Buddha gathered them again. He taught them the second great discourse, the Anattalakan Sutta, the discourse on the not-self characteristic.
Moving from impermanence to the deeper analysis of not-self.
Yes. He systematically went through everything we cling to, our body, feelings, perceptions, mental states, consciousness, and showed how they are all not mine, not I, not myself. And the texts say that hearing this analysis caused all 5 to release their final attachments all at once. They all attained full liberation, arahantship, together. The same destination, but from 5 very different starting points.
That's incredible. So now the summary for someone listening today.
Right. If you feel stuck in an old, painful habit or a job that's draining you, look to Kuchenya. He offers the conviction to just decisively drop it and choose a wiser direction.
And if you're getting frustrated, feeling like you're not making progress fast enough and you're ready to quit, you need Vapa.
Yes. Vapa reminds you that persistence and daily practice matter so much more than quick fixes. Consistency always wins.
And if your biggest struggle is letting go of a past identity, a former success, a job title, then you need Pañcavaggiyā.
Pañcavaggiyā teaches that incredible psychological freedom that comes from releasing the need to be somebody. It's the only way to make space for growth.
For those of us who feel like we always have to argue our point to be heard, there's Mahanama.
Mahanama teaches us to care more about our presence than our opinions. That inner stillness has outward power, more than any argument.
And finally, when you feel like you don't know enough to help anyone, that you're not an expert yet, you turn to Assaji.
Assaji shows us the quiet strength of just sharing honestly and modestly what you know. Sincerity and a simple truth offered with presence can be more than enough.
So really what this all means is that the path to awakening didn't start with just one type of person. It started with 5 completely different personalities, showing us there isn't a single right way to find understanding. We just have to use the strengths we already have.
They moved from the extreme of self-torture to the middle path of balance, and from there, they let go of the sense of an individual self altogether.
The journey began when these 5 men abandoned the ascetic path for the middle way, and it ended when they abandoned the self for not-self. So as you go about your day, maybe consider which identity, which status you might be clinging to that needs to be gently put down. Just like Pañcavaggiyā put down his pride so you can find your own deep stillness.